All right, our next session is going to be a little bit interactive, a little bit different, and break up some of the conversation that we've had to this point today. And it's going to encourage you to think like a creator, I hear. So really excited to welcome Dave Sommer and Alex Paterson to provide some insights on landing your message and engaging audiences through authentic storytelling, and in particular, I think digital storytelling and what that looks like in terms of both politics and policy-based institutions. Just a little bit of background on our speakers today. Alex is a strategic partner development manager and civics lead for YouTube Canada, who works with government, politics, and civic creators, driving product adoption and also ensuring a responsible platform for all users. I think this idea of AI is a question that we've had come up at the Canada Vote Summit, consistently over the last couple of years. And this session builds on some of those conversations that you might have heard last year, you might have heard in 2023, might have seen through the democracy dialogues. I think it'll be really interesting to see how this all connects to the technology conversation. Alex comes to YouTube from Google Canada, where he also led the brand and Canada's brand and reputation marketing practice, and previously served as the executive director of Canada 2020, an Ottawa-based think tank and policy convener. Next is Dave Sommer, who is a member of our advisory committee alongside me. So excited to see you speak, Dave. He is the Vice President of Strategic Communications at Enterprise Canada and Associate Creative Director at Creative Currency. Dave was most recently the head of politics and government at Instagram in Washington, D.C. Lots of good stories to tell from there, I'm sure, where he advised global political leaders, government agencies, NGOs, and IGOs on digital strategy and best practices. Previously, Dave served as the head of digital for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and before that, worked as a reporter, editor, and producer in various Canadian radio and TV newsrooms. So welcome, Alex and Dave. Excited to see what this is all about.
Oh, hello. Can we hear me?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Are we all thinking like creators yet? No. All right, we're going to get there by the end of this session. Let's talk about, welcome, Alex. Let's talk about, I think, what's still on everyone's mind. People might still have a little bit of a content hangover from the recent federal election, Election 45. What did it look like to you from your vantage point at YouTube? Who made an impact? Any challenges you might have had there?
Yeah, so first off, thanks very much, everyone. I love a 2 p.m. conference session. Everyone is at the peak of their game, which is awesome. Back of the audience, I see you because I see myself in you. That's exactly where I ought to be, but I appreciate the energy up here. Listen, Election 45, I think, was a really exciting and dynamic place on YouTube. We saw, I think, broad product adoption across all the major candidates and parties, using it in new and interesting ways, embracing live and shorts, I think, in a way that has not been seen on previous campaigns. It was also, I think, our trust and safety systems were really operating at scale and as intended. Our job is really to raise high quality and authoritative voices. And we did that through, I think, a lot of our products. So our breaking news shelf, our voter information PSAs were viewed 13 million times. Our election results products viewed 30 million times. But all that doesn't happen by accident. It comes through deep partnership with actually a lot of the organizations here in this room. We had a really incredible partnership with Elections Canada, all the major parties, all our news broadcasters. And so it was a really exciting and dynamic place. And our job as a partner manager at YouTube is making sure that civic organizations and entities have the best tools available to them to produce compelling content for Canadians where they are, which is on YouTube.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, in the political sphere, I think all the parties made good use. I think the Liberals, who had traditionally been laggards on YouTube, were there front and center, making use of shorts finally. And for lack of a better term, not just in YouTube, but in the online space, despite, of course, the usual things that happen for better or for worse during an election, we had kind of an uneventful election digitally, if that's maybe a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, we call that a win.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And I think part of that comes with a greater degree of comfort and sophistication from parties and candidates on how to use these tools. And I think it's actually why we're here to talk today a little bit about that mindset shift on thinking more like a creator.
Let's talk about thinking.
What a segue.
What a segue. You're a professional, Alex. All right, well, now I'm going to reveal what you wanted to call this panel, which was Think Like a Creator, Not a Librarian. So what is a librarian in this context, and why is it bad?
So did I realize that this event was happening in a library when I said that? No. Listen, thinking like I don't want the headline to walk away here as that the guy from YouTube is slagging librarians. No, I think that our time today, I think we wanted to talk about how particularly government institutions, civic organizations, not-for-profits can adopt the similar mindset that a lot of really great high-performing creators adopt. Your current and previous jobs, my job, we deal a lot with large institutions, electoral bodies, government departments, as well as major political parties. And I think that a common denominator is that a lot of folks will approach content, particularly video content, and they'll want to post for the sake of posting, and they'll want to focus more on like how it's organized, right? How it's nicely categorized, as opposed to thinking about their audience first. What's the reason why you're posting? Is it on a schedule? Is it strategic? Is it on a plan? And so, so thinking like a librarian is not necessarily a bad thing, but I think when it comes to being the authors of content, really engaging, informative, and yes, like entertaining content, part of that means thinking a little bit more intentionally about what you post, why you're posting. And I think that, I don't know how many times I've been in a meeting with either a large institution or organization, and they'll say like yeah, with YouTube, we will post a video, we'll get the embed link, and then we'll put it on our site, and that's job done, and it's there, and I can see it.
It's there forever.
And it's there forever, and that's great. But I think if you're using a platform like YouTube as a library, you're driving a Ferrari like a Honda. No disrespect to Honda drivers, of which I am one. But these are really powerful community engagement tools that can build your brand over the long term. And so the goal is not to simply post and leave. The goal is to actually lean into an audience that is waiting and really curious for the kind of content that you are the authoritative source for.
And I think this is what we talk about when we talk about telling versus showing, right? Which is
totally,
I think, at the heart of what we're getting into in this first part here, which is when you're hosting your content like a content library, that's you telling the audience, we do this, we do this, we do this. Here's where to find it. Click the link. Whereas I think we're going to have some examples right now about really how to show people what it is you do to get people engaged in the civic space in a way that's relatable to them.
Yeah. So I think on the showing versus telling, your message is really important, but how you communicate that message is just as important, because it's being put out there into an ecosystem, onto YouTube, onto other platforms. It's really competitive, right? And creators think really intentionally about, do I have a right thumbnail? Am I thinking about my packaging? How is it going to stand out? And so I've got a really, we'll pull up our first example here. This is actually from Election 45. This is from Elections Canada.
Should we roll it?
Yeah, we'll roll it and we'll talk about it. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but.
And this was the controversy over the super long ballot in the
yes, so this is the Carleton riding. And these are questions that people were asking. Why is it going to take so long? Elections Canada could have released a press release. They could have done a text post. here they're actually showing the difference between a regular ballot versus the long ballot. And I love this part of just showing the actual, right? And so like this is a really good example of saying, okay, we actually have something visual that we can show here that's illustrative of why this is going to take so long. We can.
Yeah, and that's in the face of a lot of really powerful, angry voices going, something is afoot here, and there's some sort of trickery and shenanigan, and what are they doing here?
Yeah, and so I think that showing versus telling, showing is a really powerful like disinfectant, right? Like it pulls back the curtain a little bit, and so I think a lot of the organizations here, whether you're an election commission or whether you're a civic engagement body or you're in government, you have a tremendous power, and I would also say responsibility, to show a little bit more into the process, as opposed to I have a pronouncement to make, I need to say something, and that be that. And so I think that like when you have an example, when you have a massive ballot to show, that's one thing. I also wanted to bring another example of there are times when you, as a creator, you do need to do some telling. Right, you do need to, like, it's not all just, it's not all having a thing to physically show. And so I think in those moments, it's actually really incumbent upon on folks to figure out, all right, well, yes, we got to do some telling here. How can we do that in the most engaging way? And if you start asking those questions, that's a really good sign that you're starting to think like a creator, because it means you're thinking about your audience. You're not just thinking about what's your message and the most important message out there in the world. You're actually thinking about, all right, well, what would people find compelling about this? What's the most interesting way? And so we've got another example here from Elections Quebec. I think there's folks from Elections Quebec here. Yes? I saw a booth outside. And Elections Quebec is doing a really great job on content. And they're I think a great source of inspiration. This clip here is a quick clip on like campaign finance, and they gamified it in a way that was really interesting. Here, go for it.
Ça s'en vient.
Aujourd'hui, on teste les connaissances de deux spécialistes du financement politique sur les contributions politiques au Québec. C'est parti. Première question. Pour commencer, c'est quoi une contribution?
C'est un don en argent ou un bien ou un service rendu gratuitement.
Vrai. Maintenant, qui peut faire une contribution?
Tout électeur peut faire une contribution, les entreprises peuvent pas.
Vrai. Quelle est la contribution maximale
you know what I like about this
annuelle qu'une
is that
électrice
it
ou un
reminds me
électeur
of
peut
the
faire à
maxim
chaque
that we
parti
try to drive
politique,
home as much as
candidat
possible, which is
indépendant,
speak
député,
in the
indépendant,
language of
aujourd'hui.
the internet, speak in the language that the people on your platform are expecting to hear, as opposed to having a strictly kind of one-way, educational kind of tone. You're playing in the sandbox, for example, of YouTube. You're playing in the sandbox of short-form video that people want to have a little bit of fun while they understand what you're doing, right?
Yeah, I think we can all take a look at this piece and think about what are the 20 other more standard ways you could have communicated this information, right? What are the, like if you were to not think about your audience, how would you communicate this in a pretty standard stock and like it's somewhere on their website, all this information. But they've brought it to life through gamification. It's got a really strong hook at the start. I find it a really creative way of bringing to life your organization's existing information in a new way.
Great. All right, let's pivot to other platforms for a minute, because I think sometimes on other platforms you'll see the librarian problem, but I think you'll also get what we call the box checking problem, which is, okay, we did a thing, we have a civic thing to talk about, I'm a politician who spoke today, I visited the bakery, here it is, I'm at the bakery, I posted the thing, great day. And I think what you see is that people are not always taking advantage of as much as possible of using their social media channels as a voice unto themselves, where they understand how to communicate as best as possible to make their social a thing in its own right. And in my line of work, we have clients who ask us all the time, how can we be a little bit more effective? At Instagram, we had politicians and NGOs and IGOs asking us, how can I increase my reach? How can I communicate this important message a lot more effectively? And so I think what we want to talk about is prioritizing, number one, interactivity as much as you can. Number two, storytelling. Telling stories with a beginning, a middle, and an end, even on, for example, Instagram stories. Let's play this clip a little bit. This is When We All Vote. This is nonpartisan voting promotion agency in the US, and they do something really simple. They introduce the topic, they show you some examples. Here's the thing that we're doing. Here's the campaign that we're running. So it's catching the eye if this is something you want to do. And at the very end, here's a link. Should you be interested in clicking the link? What do we always say, Alex? Social media is not exactly the place to get people to click on your link. You want them to click like, you want them to click share, but they're not necessarily going off campaign. And what we see a lot of, for example, on Twitter is, here's a news release about campaign financing in Quebec, click this link to watch it, and it gets, 2 likes, 2 shares maybe. If you're finding ways to tell that story interactively with that beginning, middle, and an end, then you're getting somewhere, I think.
Yeah, just a little bit of myth busting on, okay, if I put a link into something that drives people off platform, it's gonna downgrade it, or it's not gonna bubble it up. I think it's more actually about what does the audience want to do. And the audience is not necessarily always wanting to click out of a video onto either a PDF or a news release, right? I think the audience there is telling you, actually, if you could find a way to package this, the most important bite-size information for me, that's what they're looking more for.
Yeah, the algorithm is just simply showing you content that other people necessarily thinks you might be interested in based on other people's interests. And people, if you think of how you consume social content on your own, you're not necessarily clicking off platform anytime someone posts a petition link or anything else, right?
Yeah, I'll say just on the algorithm, what I'll say, a lot of folks will, when you hear the word algorithm, the algorithm is against me, or what does the algorithm?
How do I
beat the algorithm? How do I game the algorithm? Replace the word algorithm for audience, right? And that mindset shift actually, again, puts the audience at the center of the content that you produce, and you're going to start making better content choices as a result.
Another thing we talked about a little bit when it comes to creating a successful strategy is, and I know this has kind of become a bit of a buzzword, or people kind of roll their eyes and go, how do we really do this, is authenticity as much as possible. And whether you are a politician, whether you are a civic org or a civic agency, really having people understand that there are people behind this account. There is a personality, there are human beings running this account, instead of a posting machine that's posting pictures over and over and over of the same kind of thing, I think is so important. Case in point is, in the political times we live in 2025, you still see so many politicians saying, great visit with so-and-so, and you have a handshake and all the rest. And the politician didn't write that, didn't approve that, and sure as hell didn't post that, right? And so thinking about successful accounts that do this thing where you kind of lower the veil a little bit, where you can see a little bit behind the scenes, I think is really interesting. One example I like to give is in the US, Senator John Fetterman. In a previous incarnation, I know he's going through a lot in his public life now, but in the last election, his campaign team decided, we're gonna do away with the pretense that Fetterman runs this account. We're gonna completely do away with the pretense that he writes content here. We're gonna write the content, we're gonna refer to him in the third person, right on his personal account, and we'll see what we get. And they had a lot of success with that. And it's not necessarily about being irreverent or being the Wendy's of politics and trying to be clever that way, but it's about reassuring people that this is actually a living, breathing thing, as opposed to sort of like an announcement machine on a timer. Right? All right, let's get to our next segment, Alex. In terms of building successful content strategies on YouTube, scalable content strategies on YouTube. How do you do it? What's the magic sauce? Give people the recipe for success.
Okay, a really boring answer is incoming here. Okay, so I think that to have a successful, call it channel or video presence or a video strategy, your goal is consistency. It's not virality. Your goal should be to prioritize consistent, replicable, doable content strategy for your organization, as opposed to tiring yourself out chasing like viral hits. I'm sure there are people in this room who've had senior folks come to them and say, please make this go viral.
Immediately.
Just immediately, please. And that's not the goal, because that actually doesn't tell you anything. Yes, it feels really good. It's like it's a dopamine hit, right? It's something that you can put in an annual report of like, this did this many numbers, and therefore we feel really good. I think more what a measure of success would be is we had this kind of organic growth steadily over time as a result of a really good replicable content strategy. And so the question is, how do you do it? I suffer from blank page syndrome whenever I'm writing. Like I see a blank page and I see the blinking cursor and I just like get really overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. And I don't know if anyone can relate here. This isn't therapy for me, but it was a little bit. I think my coping strategy for that moment is to, I don't know what the content's going to be, but I'm going to go and I'm going to put in headings, right? So I'm going to talk about this here, I'm going to talk about this here, I'm going to talk about this here, etc. Building a content strategy is actually really similar, right? You just do that on a calendar. And so you say, okay, we are going to post this and this on Mondays and Thursdays. We're going to do a couple of short form things on off days. We're going to do one really ambitious thing a month. And we are going to collaborate with another organization once a quarter on something, right? This is just an example, but you'll put it on a calendar, and I don't know what the content's going to be, but I know when it's going to happen, and I loosely know what it's going to feel like. If you do that, you'll find that you're then in a really good position to start making, it kind of makes it real for you. Because there's a lot of folks, and I know you've worked with clients and partners, and I have as well, who they put a lot of effort into producing one video asset, right? It's like highly animated. It's got a lot of graphics, and like you went big on the voiceover and everything, and then you post it.
6 likes.
6 likes, or, it does decent on watch time, but then it peters out. And then you got someone like me from YouTube that shows up and says, great, do it again. Okay, and then do it again. Then do it again. And what you quickly realize is, well, no, hold on. If the goal is consistency, if I want to give my channel, like when you go into the back end of your channel, I'm speaking for YouTube, but this goes for, I think, other platforms as well. When you go into the back end, your goal, you want to make it look like your channel has a heartbeat, right? You want to see posts, engagement, subscriber growth over time. So the end point of all that is, well, okay, if I have to do this again and again and again and again, and it's worth it, then we need to do it with the resources that we have available to us right now. And so that's what I tell a lot of small campaign teams, NGOs, government organizations where funding is a whole, it's not it's not unlimited resources. It's pretend nothing changed. Pretend that you had the exact same people, the exact same budget, the exact same equipment. Pretend nothing changed. What would you be able to do with that for 3 months? Like, what would that look like? And when you're in those kinds of constraints, you start to think about like, all right, well, we can't do something that's really fancy animation, or we can't do something high production, but we could do this. And if you, it's a little bit more scrappy, direct to camera, we'll see some examples of this. But that consistency is going to, so this is from StatsCan. StatsCan is a great subscribe, it's a great follow. And if you look at StatsCan, if you go to their YouTube page, if you go to other platforms, it's like a metronome, right? Like they are like, there's new stuff every Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. There's great shorts. They've got a podcast. They've got like a really good multi-format game, but it's not glossy. Like we'll play this one.
Yeah.
We're StatCan employees. Of course we found 3.14 in our data sets for Pi Day. In 2022, there were 3.14 kilograms of fresh pineapple available per person. In both 1992 and 1998, there were 3.14 kilograms of peanuts available per person. And let's head back all the way to 1964, when 3.14 liters of apple juice were available per person. According to the 2021 Census of Population, these three communities have a land area of exactly 3.14 square kilometers. Moose Point, 79, Ontario, Lac-Simon, Quebec, and Grenfell, Saskatchewan.
Simple as that.
So simple, right? And also connects back to StatsCan's why, right? StatsCan has like a really clear why of like, why would someone subscribe to StatsCan? Well, it's to get stuff like that. Like they are the authoritative voice on where to find 3.14 in their data set. But more to the point is it's not just chasing virality over fun stuff like that. It's doing that repeatedly and doing that consistently with the resources that you have.
Yeah. And not being deterred at the very beginning that, okay, this didn't hit. Well, it didn't hit for a lot of different reasons, but understanding that if you keep at it and keep at it and keep at it, you will get there and you'll build in, like Alex says, that heartbeat that when an event strikes, you're ready to go with a rapid response. When something happens, you already have your content production mechanism in place that can allow you to pivot and create something interesting. Let's pivot to other creators, for example, non-institutional creators off YouTube, because I see, you see something brewing, certainly in the last election, past couple elections in the US as well, and in Canada, the rise of independent creators who are speaking to an audience outside of the 24/7 political back and forth bubble and having a lot of great success talking to people on a level that maybe we don't always see because to us, we're completely immersed in it all the time. Regular people also want to understand these times we're going through. Regular people also want to see and understand political content, and they're not necessarily going to always be getting that from traditional trusted sources. So one thing to think about when you are creating content is to reach as far and wide as possible beyond what you think your expected audience might be. Here's a creator, Phaedra de Saint Rome, who some of us in this room may know, who has found herself unexpectedly going viral lately.
Mark Carney has no charisma. Oh, he's so boring. Do you know how refreshing it is for people to think a politician is boring? In this year 2025, there are 3 things I want in a political leader. 1, I want them to have experience. 2, I want them to be competent. And 3, I want them to be well balanced.
So that did really well, and Prime Minister Carney actually played that in his election night montage at his victory headquarters. This quick video shot on a phone calling him boring, and he's literally playing it, right? But this is the new reality of what we're dealing with, online and the way people talk about politics. Here's another creator just doing this. Let's play this. There is a high probability that a lot of people who watched this video didn't know who won that by-election yet, and this might have been sort of how they found this out. This video got, I think, 2.2 million views for this, right? So it's really interesting to think about the way people are talking about these things online. Next is this guy named Frank Dominic. So he does a lot of like breaking down the news on social media. I see some people sort of nodding in recognition. This is him talking about recounts and how they work. Let's listen to this.
Oh, I can just hear the conspiracy theorists making the videos already, saying about how it's all rigged. Just like how our electoral process is transparent, so are these content creators. You can see right through them and understand exactly what they're going to do before they even do it.
I think we need more like this. I think we need more people who are ready, willing, and eager to poke holes in the conspiracy theorists with the same amount of sort of enthusiasm and regularity in production that we see from folks like this.
I think it was a really good example from those clips you played there is they all have really strong hooks, right? So for short form video, the first second matters. It just really does. Right, we call that having a really strong hook, but then you want to deliver on that hook, so you want to have really strong momentum, right? And there's different ways, there's different hooks, right? Like there's different ways that you can grab people, but that you want them to stick around. You want to make it worth their while. And so I think what you picked out was like, all right, really great hook, and then they all delivered on that hook.
All right, let's go to next segment. We've been talking at a really high level here. Let's drill it down a little bit into tips and tricks. How does one act like a creator or post like a creator or create like a creator? and what are the tools and tricks you can use to get there. And I think one thing in talking to you and understanding kind of where you come to this problem from as someone who's at YouTube, someone who understands what people go through and who works with so many high profile people putting videos online, is that the best tool in your toolbox is getting approval for what you're trying to do. And so I want to ask the audience, how many people here have day-to-day control over social media accounts, institutionally or personal? Okay.
See a couple shy hands.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many people are approving the content day-to-day in a social media account? All right. We got
More approvers, I think, here, which is interesting, which is good.
Yeah. I mean, so look, let's talk a little bit about it then. How do we build in that tool of flexibility for ourselves? How do you make the case for the folks above you to trust you, to say, listen, I know what I'm doing here?
Yeah, so maybe to take a step back here for a second, we're talking about approval chains of how do you get a piece of content to yes and live and posted. And it's all well and good for us to come in and say, think like a creator. Well, a creator's one person. They're their own approval chain, right? And up they go. You work in organizations. You work in many cases for election commissions or in or around government. And so stakes are high, right? What you say matters. And so I don't think we want to be flippant about the idea of abandoning approval chains in order to get to yes. I think we want to talk here a little bit about like, all right, so in your reality, again, with the resources and constraints that you have, how can you add a little bit of oil, right, to that machine? And I think I come at this, and Dave, I'm interested in your experience with this as well, with, I think, two ideas. One is the idea of what we call digital time. And then the second is data-powered decision-making. Let's talk about digital time first. So this is not a new concept for folks that have worked on political campaigns, but I actually see it scaling really well to other organizations. So the idea of digital time is you've got the keys to someone's social accounts or their video platforms or their online presence. In this case, it may be a candidate, or it could be your chief electoral officer, or it could be your CEO or your lead engagement person. You're going to put 15 minutes of what you're going to call digital time on their calendar every week. And you're going to schedule it. It's going to be real. It's going to be a thing that you open up your calendar and you say, that says digital time. And you're going to go and you're going to use that 15 minutes to capture a couple photos, film a couple of short form videos, maybe answer some comments, like reply to some comments. Don't be afraid of the comments. And you're going to take that 15 minutes and you're going to take the contents that you get from that and you're going to go do amazing things with it. And then you're going to report back. You say, okay, for those 15 minutes, here's what I was able to go get you. I was able to go get you X number more subscribers. I was able to grow our watch time by X%. I was able to make the following people in the comments actually pretty happy, right, with the fact that we responded and showed up. Then you're going to do it again the next week. And pretty soon that 15 minutes every week is going to turn into maybe 30 minutes. And then that 30 minutes a week is going to turn into maybe 20 minutes every other day. And then maybe it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day. The point is you are making real the return on investment for the time, right? And you are building the muscle. That's the job. The job is to build organizational muscle. And he says flexing like he has them. And part of that is proving value. Right? Like it can seem sort of ephemera and like, oh, it's not value. It's like, no. For this amount of time, I was able to get you X. So imagine what I can do with 5 minutes more.
Yeah, certainly when I was in politics, I wish I had implemented something like that because that's such a great idea. And it certainly does help you build authenticity and reality and believability when you have someone who's really working at it and you have your principal who's working at it, weekly or monthly. But I called it at the time managing up by PowerPoint. So without having digital time, I was at least able to, if I was given a little bit of leash to take a risk and it did well, for example, with the Prime Minister and folks were nervous and something worked out, I was rushing to PowerPoint to put that in a little pie chart and be like, look how this piece of risky content did versus the usual thing. Look, do you see, Chief of Staff? And, in the 4 minutes a day she had for me, would be like, yes, good, keep going. And then you get a longer leash for the next time. It's let that speak to you, let that speak to your success, and let it speak to your higher ups for sure.
I think second is we talked about data-powered decision-making, and there's actually a little bit of that in there, Dave. And but we've all been in moments where there's rapid response, and your organization tends to stretch the boundaries of what we consider rapid as a result. And I think one of the ways that you as a digital team or as a content creator for your organization is to keep your finger on the pulse of search insights and social conversation. This is from Elections Canada. This is their top performing piece of content from Election 45 from a views perspective. There's a lot of conversation about what can you bring into the election booth? Can you bring a pencil? Is there other stuff? Elections Canada was ready to go with a really simple and effective piece of content that also adhered to the show, not tell.
Fact: we provide pencils to mark your ballot. The mark made with these pencils can't be smudged. But if you want, you can bring your own pen or pencil. There's an easy way to get accurate info about elections. ElectoFacts, just one click away. Find out more at elections.ca.
So why do they need to do this, or why do they feel compelled to post something like this?
Well, I think one, it does combat mis and disinformation, right? I also think too, for a platform like YouTube, which is a search and discovery powered platform, right? It's a video platform, but it's also powered by search. A way that I really like civic creators to think about themselves is you are the authoritative answer to someone's curious question, right? And as a result, you have the opportunity to fill the search gap, right? And I would actually empower organizations and departments and campaign teams to kind of look inward and be like, all right, well, what are the 10 questions that we know the answer to, right? What are the 10 things that we are the authoritative answer for? That can power your 3-month content calendar. And so, but for that piece of content right there, that was powered by search insights, rapid response, and it also armed other creators and viewers to then share in their network and said, no, this comes directly from Elections Canada. Look, it's compelling. It shows it and tells at the same time. And it was almost a shield against mis and disinformation.
Yeah, and it was a nimble pivot at a time where they needed it most. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about the sort of theoretical tool you need, which is understanding how to get things approved, understanding how to prove that what you need to post is what you need to post. Let's get into the questions we get all the time, Alex, which is, how long does it have to be? What kind of camera do I need to use? 16 by 9 or 9 by 16? What is the magical sauce?
Yeah, okay. So I'll give some satisfying and unsatisfying answers at the same time, which is just my whole thing, apparently. On length, your video should be as long as it is compelling. If you can do it in 5 minutes as opposed to 7 minutes, do it in 5 minutes. If you need that extra minute, it's going to get you that little bit more of value, then great. And if it doesn't work, test and learn and figure it out the next time. I think what I would say is that there's more an interesting distinction between whether something should be horizontal versus vertical, right? So when we talk about horizontal video, we're talking about YouTube videos. We're talking about what we would call VOD, video on demand, or what we would call long form. And as I've gotten a little bit older, long form keeps getting longer. It's incredible the retention that some long form pieces of content. We see this actually with the rise of video podcasting. On short form, if you're doing something in short form, this is where you really need to pay attention to how a video is being consumed, right? If it's a short form video, this is true on YouTube, it's true for other platforms as well. It's really fluid, right? It's pretty liquid, right? The audience is able to swipe away very easily. Whereas if you are on a YouTube watch page, there's a high degree of retention and immersion there. So if you have a short form piece of content, that's where the rules come into place of like have a really strong hook, have some decent momentum, really focus on the storytelling. Dave, to your point. On production stuff, like what do I need? People may have heard me say this before. If it feels like TV, you're doing it wrong. And I think there's a lot of barriers that folks put in between wanting to start on video and actually doing it. And I think a lot of those barriers are actually pretty artificial. Like I will hear things like, I don't have the right camera. I don't have the right lighting. I don't have the right microphone. And so therefore, or I'm not a live streamer with multi-camera stuff, or I don't make the stuff in my background glow with those underglow lights. And so therefore, I think all of that is, I think it's understandable, but I also think it is an excuse. I think you have everything that you need to produce really compelling content on the phone in your pocket. With the exception, I would say, of do focus on capturing good audio. And sometimes that means like, yeah, get like a little Bluetooth microphone like that. But also if you don't have that and you don't have that gear, you can't afford it, that's fine. Just be mindful of the environment that you are capturing that audio in.
Yeah, 100%. One thing I'd also add, and I know it almost sounds cliche to say it now, but at the end of the day, content is the most important thing. And like Alex said, creating compelling content, the video only needs to be as long, for example, as the content is compelling. And I think we've all followed those creators who started out with the grainiest, jankiest looking stuff. And as their content is interesting and compelling, they grow and they have this glow up, and all of a sudden they've got a sort of a really, really nice looking stream, a really nice looking production because they've enjoyed that success. But remember that it doesn't take much to get started. And from
No, I would say that just to connect a few different thoughts here, I would not make an upfront investment in your video strategy. I wouldn't do that. I would actually start, see how it goes. Can you do it with the resources you have? And then start making some purchases and investments, right? Show yourself that it's kind of like going to the gym of like, I'm gonna buy new shoes and a really fancy workout gear.
This is the year, buddy.
Yeah, this is my year for sure. What is it? June? You want to prove to yourself that you can do it before you start making those investments in pieces. And I think I'm dead set that that's like the right approach for either a small team or even a large organization.
I wish I could bottle what you just said, because in my current position in agency life, of course, you get clients who come to you right away saying, we need to boost our video strategy, so how do we do a spectacular 2-minute hero video with all the bells and whistles and everything else like you talked about? And then they do fall off, they don't follow a strategic posting strategy, and you want to tell them, let's start slow. Let's get our shorts together. Let's get our social media presence together, and then we can worry about the sort of anthemic hero video. But it doesn't always work like that in corporate life. We try as much as we can, but you're still dealing with clients who, for one reason or another, are asking you, make me a beautiful hero video and get me on the op-ed page of the Globe and Mail. And this is what they want. So learning to work within those parameters and telling them strategy, I think is so important. Yeah. All right, last minute lightning round. Let's look into the future a little bit of great trends in content creation. If you're looking into the crystal ball, what do you think is coming around the corner?
So I have no crystal ball, but I mentioned it before. I am actually really interested to see what happens with video podcasting. I think that podcasting has been YouTube is now the most listened to podcast platform in Canada. I am really interested to see what happens when creators get their hands on that format. I think that we're going to see a lot of experimentation. I'm interested to see what happens when audio-first storytellers start to add a couple more video tools to their toolkit. And I think for civic organizations, I would actually be really encouraged by the signals that we are getting from more long-form, sit-down conversations. There is such an appetite for that. And while it's really important in a short-form video world to like capture and be concise and be compelling, there is also an audience out there for a more long-form explainers, still compelling. I'm excited to see what happens.
Right. On my end, I think number one, I'm an evangelist for wearables, and
I know this.
Yeah,
about you,
I
yes.
swung and missed on the VR goggles, which I know that's kind of flopping and all the rest, but I think the future can maybe lie in the Ray-Ban Meta collaboration. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more POV stuff shot with that stuff, and who knows where that goes next. And I think also in terms of creator and brand tone, I think maybe the next thing after this current era of absurd humor and sort of ironic humor that we have from brands, once the sort of absurdity passes, I think we're going to see a pivot back to honesty. I think you saw it last week with HBO and their accounts talking about how, okay, the name went from HBO to Max, and now it's back to HBO Max, and they did this kind of like, they allowed their accounts to be totally honest, like, this is terrible, we know it's terrible, but anyway, we're going back to HBO Max, and you had a lot of commentary saying this is a really smart and interesting way to use honesty and sincerity while still making your point.
Yeah, and I would say, and I get why this is a scary thing, particularly in government and civic world, but you're starting to see green shoots of this. Imperfections are your friend, right? Imperfections and authenticity. Authenticity, I think, gets overdone, but I think what's behind that is a desire from your audience to feel that they are connecting with a real human on the other end. And so when the way I see certain either elections organizations or government bodies or departments like putting a human face on their content,
100%.
And which I understand can be a scary and a vulnerable thing to do. But there is an entire generation, I think, of really talented content creators and like video first strategists that are making their way into public life. And they understand that imperfections and authenticity are not something to be polished out of the end product. And I'm excited to see where that goes.
Alex Paterson, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. And I should say, I know you've got to go to a flight. I'm going to stick around. If people have questions or want to chat, I can meet you out in the hallway, and happy to take a look at your YouTube channel. We'll pop open laptops and look under the hood. But thank you very much, everyone. Really appreciate it.